Hey guys, Matthew, and welcome to episode number 10 of the Casual Exile series. Today we are going to be talking about low investment flipping. Now, like I said in the last episode, I don't want to make this entire series about flipping. So this is going to be the last video of the series, which is going to focus on a flipping side of things. Now, the reason I'm making this video is not because necessarily I want you guys to go out and flip a bunch of stuff, but it's also in order to make sure that people are not taking advantage of your items as well. So it's going to be based on, precautions for yourself, but also if you're trying to make a few extra chaos, a few extra exalts, during your playtime, these are going to be methods that you can use. So there's two methods that I want to be talking about today. The first one is going to be flipping consumables. So when I say consumables, I basically mean anything that you can use and that gets disappeared and like sunk into the game. So, fossils, essences, stuff like that. Anything like that is considered a consumable and technically can be flipped. The reason for that is very simple: convenience. People are going to pay more for convenience, right? They don't want to go out and buy one scarab from 17 different people. They want to buy 17 scarabs from one person, right? So that's why this is going to be very important and a very decent way to make some currency, especially if you're starting off and you have nothing to work off of, okay? So there's a few different rules you need to know, though, in order to flip consumables, because not all consumables are equal, and of course, not every single one of them is going to work. Even if the majority of them will work, some will work better, and which ones are going to work better are going to be based on a set of rules. The first rule is basically the item needs to have large supply, right? You need to be able to buy a lot of them, otherwise, what's the point, right? So if it's an item that is going to pop up like once per day or once every 3 hours, it's not going to be a good item. You want to be using items that are going to be popping up consistently so that you can easily buy them. But conversely, while you want to be using items that are going to be popping up a lot, you don't want to be using items or flipping items that one individual person can basically farm a lot of. Because the reason for that is very simple. If there's a single person who can farm, 30, 40, 50 of that specific item in a very short amount of time, then the market is going to be oversaturated. Because if one person can do that, then what can the entire player base do? Obviously, we're going to run into an issue of where there's going to be too much supply on the market, and therefore you're not going to be able to stand out because you have, bulk, if everybody has bulk, right? So those are two rules that kind of contradict themselves, but are very, very important to actually follow. And obviously, the next thing is going to be demand, right? If nobody cares about that specific item, if nobody wants that fossil, if nobody wants that scarab, whatever it is, then it's not going to sell. And then you're just going to be, sitting there with, your dick in your hands, just wondering, why did you even go out and buy those items, right? So where can you find these items? I made a bit of a guide on where to find them, and I added a little bit of extra information based on which items you should be flipping. Now, this is not exactly which one, because obviously if I go out and say you should be flipping this specific fossil or this specific essence, then everybody's just going to do that one, and all of a sudden it's going to suck, and people are going to come back to me and be like, yo, your advice sucks, Matt. So what I did instead is I put categories and the reason why they're good or the reason why they're not so good, and when they're good and when they're not so good, basically. So let's go ahead and look at a bit of an example on this. So if we took, these are deafening essences of spite. The way that you would see whether an item is potentially good or not is to go through the following process. You would go ahead and look at the item first and see the price of it under bulk exchange. So I have chaos. I want to buy deafening essence of spite with no minimum stock. Now this is going to output, the price of the item. So we can see right now that if I want to buy some deafening essence of spite or with no minimum stock from people, I'm going to have to pay, 10 or 11 chaos or so. Okay, cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the same thing, but I'm going to look at a minimum stock that I consider to be reasonable. So maybe 10 at a time. If I want to buy 10 at a time, you'll see that I have to pay 16 or 17 chaos. Now that's an extra 6 or 7 extra chaos that I have to pay because I want to buy more at a time. This is over 50% profit margin, right? But it gets actually better than that. A lot of the time, you'll be able to make even more profit if you sell them in exalts. Now, if we look at this same exact example here, 10 chaos to 17 chaos. So if I was to buy 5 of these, right, I would pay, let's say 50C, and then I would sell them for, let's say 85C, right? Well, already I've made 35 chaos from buying, 5 items. Not too bad, right? Well, if I was to sell them in exalts, I can sell 5 of them for an exalt, which is 100C, which is another extra 15 chaos profit on top of what I was already making. Now, at that point, I bought 5 of them for 50C, and I sold 5 of them for 1 exalt, which is 100 chaos. So 100% profit margin. I doubled my money. Now, this applies not to only Deafening Essences of Spite, pretty much anything that I've listed here. And of course, like I said, there's additional information because not all of them are equal. And there's definitely some things you'll want to look into. So, check out the document as always. That is going to be in the description of the video, the Google document link. It is a public document. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to cover is perfect uniques. Now, we talked about perfect uniques and the importance of roles in some previous videos, like, for example, when we talked about faded uniques. But you can also flip these. You don't necessarily need to be looking at those only for faded uniques. You can definitely flip perfect uniques, and they don't necessarily need to be perfect to be flippable. Right, so I have listed a website for the list of all the uniques in the game. By the way, if you're wondering, I can't click these links in the database. You can actually click at the start of the link because this is where the cell starts, and this is going to allow you to click any of the links inside inside my document. Right, so this is a list of all the uniques in the game. Now, this was just to put it out there. It's not necessarily something that you'll be using for this, but it can be useful. Anyways, so let's go ahead and look at an example of Goldworm boots. Now, this is Goldworm boots. They've got mana regen, they've got quantity, fire res, and a little bit of move speed. Pretty good boots. Obviously, the go-to for magic finding outside of standard, where they have legacy magic find boots. But I digress. We've got some rolls on there, right? So we've got a roll of quantity, which is 14 to 20%, and a roll of fire resistance as well. So if we look at a pair of random Goldworm boots from the website, we will see that it's 5C. Now, if we actually go ahead and look at the pair of these same exact boots, but with 20% quantity, which is a perfect quantity roll, it's an exalt. That is 20 times more expensive for the fact that it has perfect quantity on it, right? I'm sure you're starting to see there's some potential for profit here. Now, if we look a step further and look at perfect quantity, but also perfect fire resistance, it goes up to 2.4 exalts. Now we're talking over 40 times more expensive than your regular average pair of goldworms. We can take advantage of that. You can take advantage of that as well. So first off, let's talk about why that is. Why would you pay that much more for something so trivial as an extra bit of fire resistance or a little bit of extra quantity? Well, the reason is simple. Some people like to min-max their builds, and therefore they like to have perfect items, especially when it comes to cheaper items like this, especially paired with Harvest, with everybody, making these actually truly perfect items, divining them to perfection. People like their characters to look very, very pretty, and that requires perfect items. So why would you pay an extra, 20 times the price for perfect quantity, or 40 times the price for perfect quantity and fire res? It's very simple. It's cheaper. You might think that this is more expensive, but realistically this is a lot cheaper. Well, the range of quantity goes from 14 to 20, which is a range of 7 different values, and the range of fire resistance is 40 to 50, which is 11 different values. If you do the math on this, you would require 77 divines to actually go from here to here. So this is a jump of, let's just say, nothing to 2.4 exalt, right? A fairly decent jump. Well, 77 divines is over 7 exalts worth of divines. So what's cheaper, 2.4 exalts or 7 exalts, right? This is clearly cheaper, a lot cheaper. So if you're a newer player or casual player, you might not realize this, and you might be like, holy crap, why would you pay such a high amount of currency, like such a high price for something so trivial? Well, because it's a lot cheaper than to make it yourself. And as I said, people want perfect items. Now the question becomes, okay, cool. You told us about goldworms, Matt, but what about every other item, right? There's got to be other items. How do I figure out which items I can do this with? How do I figure out which are the best items that I care for in terms of rolls? So the way that you're going to do that is you're going to head over to PoE Ninja under the builds. Again, press at the start of the cell and you'll be able to click the link. This is going to open up this page. On this page, you will see, I've also explained it in the document, but anyways, just visually. You'll see here it says items. This is only unique items. And this is for the top 17,000 characters in the league currently. This is about the top 15% of players, right? So that means that there's 85% of the population that are not actually on there. Now, this doesn't actually matter. Why? Well, put it simply, the people who are likely to buy your perfect items are the top 15%. Not only that, the people who are not the top 15%, the 85% that are behind those, are following what the top 15% are doing the vast majority of the time. They're going to PoE Ninja and they're looking at the builds that people are playing, or looking at their favorite streamers or favorite YouTube, content creators with their builds, and then they're following those. And chances are that those people who are looking through at these videos and all these things from these different content creators are seeing items like this, right? Because the more advanced players are using items like this. So that's why it doesn't matter, even if we ignore the 85% of characters that are not listed on this website. So what are you going to do once you see this? Well, essentially, this is going to tell you what is meta, because what is flippable is basically 100% based on what is meta. So depending on these items, these are the ones that you will be wanting to flip. Now, of course, not every single one of these items have different roles, and not every single role on these items have value, right? So an item like, for example, this Circle of Anguish here, you might think that the strength is going to be the thing that is going to add value, but it's not. So of course, there's going to be some amount of game knowledge that is going to be important here, but keep it simple and you'll be able to make a killing, right? So what I would say anyways is that any item which has about even 0.5 to 1% usage is an item that I think is flippable. Phase Breakers is used by 0.8% of the player base. In my opinion, that's good. That's fine. You can totally flip Phase Breakers. You can buy some very well-rolled Phase Breakers, and you can make a profit doing so. Right, so how do you go about doing that? Well, you can actually go a step further, actually. Under the all here, you could actually check for each item category. So if we go under boots, for example, we'll be able to see our gold worms that are used by 1% of the player base, yet they're 40 times more expensive, which is pretty cool. So anyways, how do we go about actually setting up our live search? Now, this is going to be very simple. You're going to head over to poe.sale, which is the official website for trading. You're going to type the name of your item in the search bar. So let's go ahead and type in the same example. Let's go ahead and do gold worms. And then under stats filter, you're going to add in the stats you care for. So in this case, let's just do quantity. So we saw that a pair of gold worms was 5C and perfect ones were 1 Exile, which is 20 times more expensive, like I've said already. Okay, cool. So we have a bunch of different ones, right? But if I buy this for 1x, I can only sell it for 1x. I'm not going to make any profit, right? So what I need to do is set up a live search in order for me to be able to buy these 20% quantity boots at the price of non-20% quantity boots. Now, the price that you're willing to pay is going to be up to you, but I would say don't be too stingy on this if you actually want to be able to get some hits. So what you're going to do next is you're going to go under buyout price, and you're going to put in the maximum price that you are willing to pay for these. So if I know that they're going to be selling for 1 Exalt, which is 100 Chaos, and that the average whatever roll is worth 5 Chaos, I might be willing to pay 20 Chaos. So I'm going to search this, and there's going to be obviously no results. Now we can look at offline just to see if there's ever been any offline, and we can see 12 days ago, 24 days ago, and 23 days ago there have been some. Now I'd be willing to bet these people haven't logged in since then, but that doesn't really matter. What we're interested in here is basically getting new pairs of boots listed for that price, so we are going to simply activate live search. Now we are going to allow the notification, and if ever anybody pops in a gold worm with 20% quantity with 20 chaos or below, or at the price of 20 chaos or below, it's going to pop up. We simply send them a message and try to buy their item. Now, you could say that this is taking advantage of people, and you would be damn right. It is. You're taking advantage of the fact that you have watched this video, and therefore you have this knowledge. And in my opinion, that gives you the right, and you deserved, because you have the knowledge, to be able to flip these items. Now, I use the example of gold worms, but again, it doesn't mean that gold worms is going to be something that's going to work for any of you necessarily. You want to be creative with this. Use, the items list. Go ahead and I would say stay away from the ones that are being used by the vast majority of players. So for example, Azir's Promise or even Wise Oak, stuff like that, because there's too many people who are actually actively trying to flip those because they are so common. Try to go down the path of things that are used a little bit less common, a little bit more, unknown, and therefore you're gonna have a much higher chance of actually getting these items whenever they do pop up and you PM for them, and therefore you're going to be able to make currency more reliably on those, even if they are more, rare items per se. What that also allows you to do, if you're actually going for rarer items, is it allows you to actually go for, it allows you to actually play the game all while you're flipping, unlike if you did some very, very common flask, for example, that a million different people are flipping. Not only are you going to be PMing people like every other minute for these flasks, but you're not going to get any of them because the people who are listing them are getting spammed into oblivion, and therefore they're probably going to verify why they are getting spammed, and therefore relist their items at the actual price that it's worth. So that basically concludes the video on low investment flipping. Like I said, this is the last video of the series, which I'll be basing on flipping. We are going to go back to, into currency making methods that are not based on flipping, starting from this video onwards. Either way though, I hope you guys enjoyed, and as always, I want to say a huge thank you to my supporters. So Johnny, Michael, Cluzy, Zarashi, Luro, Gaikona, Stefan, Croonin, Michael, JW, Player, Scott, Richard, Justin, Alex, Ollie, Matt, Kevin, Marcus, Matthias, Hayden, Bitizen, Axel, and Acid, as well as, of course, anybody else who wishes to remain anonymous or anybody else who has supported me in the past. This list is not currently updated. There's a lot of new people on the Patreon, and I want to say a huge thank you to you guys. I'll be updating it in about a week because I've been updating it like twice a month. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.